Okay, we're gonna do another episode of This Movie Solves This Other Movie's Problems. And yeah, admittedly, I've done this before. I did this with the movie Passengers and Palm Springs. And if you haven't seen that, I'll send a link. But the short and the long of it is, if you change the point of view of the main character to the girl in Passengers, that's kind of what Palm Springs did, and what actually makes it really satisfying and makes the story make sense instead of being creepy. This is another, creepy guys versus girls kind of situation. It's the movie Don't Worry Darling, directed by Olivia Wilde. And the solution, because Don't Worry Darling is, in my opinion, deeply flawed movie and kind of broken, Blink Twice by Zoe Kravitz. And so you have some very weird parallels in these two movies, because obviously they're both celebrity actresses doing a sort of like feminist thriller, in kind of a heightened universe kind of a situation. Don't Worry Darling, they're in sort of a 1950s like cult of personality, like a company town. And Blink Twice, they're literally just on a crazy billionaire's island, and they're partying, and stuff is weird. And so in both movies, they're isolated with all these men that they don't really know, and there's definitely like a confident like cult of personality, main guy who seems to be in charge of all of it, who seems to be, running everything. And the women, some feels like something's off, feels like something's wrong. And so the main characters of both of these stories, go on the journey to try to figure out why this feels so wrong and what's so wrong about it. And credit where credit's due, the men in both these stories are just aggressively evil, and they're coming off as real evil. This like charismatic evil guy. It's kind of awesome. I kind of really like it. But yeah, there's no bones about it. All these dudes are evil, and they should be getting their comeuppance, and that's really what the story's about. Having said that, Don't Worry Darling, it's much more. I feel I've done material on it. I've done like a breakdown on how to rewrite the script, because I think really the weakness of Don't Worry Darling is just the writing and the setups and the payoffs and all the clues and everything of the discovery of the main character just doesn't work. Like it's just broken, and there's a lot of plot holes. And so yeah, I think more time writing, more time spent, trying to figure out the story and make sure all the clues that this main character is discovering actually makes sense. Because and here comes the spoilers for Don't Worry Darling, if you haven't seen it. She's stuck in a simulation. All the women are stuck in sort of a 1950s simulation, where the guys are basically just have them like chained to a bed, and they jump in between working for the cult leader, in order to hang out with their wives in this fantasy. And then they, all the times they're not, when they go drive their cars away and say goodbye to the girls at the beginning of workday, they actually have to go work to pay off their debt, because it's expensive to run a simulation where you have kidnapped your wife, that kind of thing. So yeah, the problem is, because the whole thing is a simulation and the main character is stuck in the simulation looking for clues. Well, it's you're looking for clues in the matrix. There's nothing, everything is artificial on purpose. And so there's no real like discovery of anything. The only thing that really is a discovery is the main character sees one of her friends off herself, and it does have matrix rules. So if you're off yourself in the matrix, you're gone. Same deal. But that sort of starts this main character's journey to figure it out, like what's going on and why does this thing feel so weird. But all she gets to is she, ends up walking to where the guys, drive their car to the building, and ends up pressing her face against the glass. And video game rules, that's the door to get out of the video game. And fortunately or unfortunately, Harry Styles, her husband, happens to be there when she wakes up and knocks her back out and puts her back into the simulation, which I'm a little confused about the logic of that specifically, because why wouldn't she remember that in a meaningful way? But in a movie rife with plot holes, I don't, it is what it is. So there's no consequences. There's nothing really to discover. Obviously, it's the men have kidnapped their wives and locked them into a prison of their own mind kind of thing, and they're just hanging out with them when they're not working. It's a really interesting universe and a really interesting world. But because there's no consequences, there's no setups, there's no payoffs, because the main character is stuck in a world that by design doesn't make sense. There's just not a lot to glean from that. And so yeah, I just think that basically every single clue in the path of discovery of the characters Nowhere Darling are red herrings, because they don't really lead to anything. The only thing you can do is either get taken out, and then you're out because your mind is gone, or you go up to the glass window in the building where the guys go, and then you're out. But then, if your husband happens to be sitting next to you, he'll just put you back in. So there's nowhere to go. It's just very frustrating. I don't know. I've done material on it, but it's neither here nor there. Blink Twice, similar pedigree. Olivia Wilde did Don't Worry Darling. It was actually her second movie. Her first movie was Booksmart, which I really, really, really enjoyed. But then she had Don't Worry Darling, and it was kind of a disaster, all fluff, all sparkle, no whatever, no fireworks kind of thing. Anyway, it looked good, but it sucked. Blink Twice, Zoe Kravitz, very similar pedigree. Zoe Kravitz, obviously actress. If you're of a certain generation, she's also the daughter of Lenny Kravitz. So there's that. But yeah, it's a very similar situation. Charismatic leader on an island, and they're hanging out partying, and they're getting a bad feeling, but they can't explain it, and they're sort of losing track of time, so they're disoriented, the playing with the whole, women's uh minds kind of thing. And so very similar setup to Don't Worry Darling, but where it diverges is in Blink Twice. The best friend figures it out because the snake venom, conked her out of it, and she started remembering horrible, horrible things. But she can't really articulate that because our main character's point of view is not the friend's point of view. And so she's getting hints from her friend, but she's not getting the real information. But then her friend disappears. And so the next day she goes, "Well, where's my friend?" And nobody seems to remember her friend. And that's where things, start kicking off the search for clues. And credit where credit's due, her friend, before disappearing, left some good clues, and did her due diligence in trying to awaken the rest of the girls to this problem. Ultimately, the main character goes and gets some snake venom herself and starts remembering stuff, and then it becomes this really interesting situation that I think Don't Worry Darling could have attempted if it had been written differently. But it's this push pull of, you have the girls at different stages of remembering all the horrible things these men have done and trying to keep it together, trying to act like nothing's wrong, while also, spending time with these guys who are trying to figure out if these girls remember anything. And so there's this interesting push pull about, what do the girls know? What do the guys know that the girls know, and who's getting ahead of who? It's actually incredibly satisfying. I won't spoil the end because I do think it's worth watching, and I think not enough people watch this movie. But there's a really poetic use of the same function of the forgetting stuff that happened to the girls. The main character girl uses it again at the end in a really satisfying way. That's like, it's so cool. It's so worth it, and I gotta say, you should go see it. But if you haven't, but that's really what it is. It's this setup payoff thing that I feel like Blink Twice really did a good job, where it's sort of a slow burn at the beginning, but you're building to stuff, and as more information comes out, the stakes keep going up and up and up, and it sort of ratchets it up until this big showdown in the finale. Whereas Don't Worry Darling is just basically the main characters like stumbling through a fake world of no consequence, and even when she's kind of figured it out, there's no way to really figure it out because she has to get out of the simulation in order to figure it out. And that's like the last 10 seconds of the movie. Whereas Blink Twice, it very much happens in real time, and the confrontation with the guys happens because the girls have figured it out. So I wouldn't say it's as clear cut a one-to-one situation as, Passengers getting solved by Palm Springs by simply swapping points of view. But I do think it's really interesting that you have these two similar movies. God, I wanted Don't Worry Darling to be good, but it just wasn't. I know Don't Worry Darling gets compared to Stepford Wives a lot, which I think is very true, and that's very much where it was going. But I think Blink Twice, even if you took the Don't Worry Darling of all the Stepfordy stuff, put it in Blink Twice, would still be the satisfying stuff because of the setups and the payoffs and all this, all the little details that matter to the characters, instead of just this, beautiful world that actually is of no consequence. So let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you next time.